So I want to welcome you to this lesson and want to discuss the selected Old Testament prophets and their teachings. I want to begin, or in this topic, we'll be discussing prophets by defining what's a prophet, what is the prophecy, categories of prophets, writing of prophetic messages. Thereafter, we are going to discuss Prophet Amos and Prophet Jeremiah. So, who is a prophet? Who is a prophet? A prophet is somebody who has been sent by God to deliver a certain message. So he is a person who speaks and acts on behalf of God. And they have been given different titles that illustrate the character and nature of a prophet. Or we have some other terms which can be used to describe who a prophet is. Like we have a seer, a messenger of God, we have a man of God, watchman of God's word, we have man of spirit, interpreter of God's word, servant of Yahweh, Nabi, and many others. All of them have been used to describe who a prophet is. And as we've said, is a person who speaks or acts on behalf of God. And when a prophet is delivering that message, when a prophet is sending that message, is acting on behalf of God, we say that prophet is prophesying. So the act or process of delivering the truth as revealed by God is called prophecy. And as he's prophesying, that as he's delivering the message, the prophet is prophesying. Now, let us see categories of prophets. We want to see what you call categories of prophets. Categories of prophets. We have up to around 7 categories of prophets. One is what we call true prophets. We have what we call true prophets. These prophets are prophets who acted on behalf of God and their messages came to pass. Their messages were fulfilled. So they acted on behalf of God, or they delivered God's messages and their messages came to pass. And these prophets also upheld the covenant way of life. They upheld the covenant way of life. Another important category is what we call the false prophets. The false prophets. These were prophets who claimed to speak on behalf of Yahweh's name, yet their messages were never fulfilled. They claimed, they were not sent, they claimed to speak in Yahweh's name, yet their messages never came to pass or were not fulfilled. And so they are categorized as false prophets. Another category is what we call the major prophets. Major prophets. These prophets are prophets whose work or writing is elaborate or detailed, given to them by God. So they were delivering elaborate messages. They were delivering detailed messages, specific messages. And most of them have these messages bears their names. Like Isaiah, we have Jeremiah, Lamentations, Ezekiel. So we can say those are some of the major prophets. Then we have minor prophets. Minor prophets. Minor prophets, their work is brief or short oracles. They are brief or short oracles. They include Hosea, Joel, Amos, Obadiah, Micah, Nahum, Jonah, Habakkuk, Zephaniah, Haggai, Zechariah, and Malachi. They are all minor prophets. Then we have what you call canonical. Canonical prophets. These prophets are prophets whose work has been recorded under their names. They include Jeremiah, you can mention them, Isaiah, Daniel, Hosea, and the others. Then we have non-canonical. Then we have what you call the non-canonical. The non-canonical prophets. These are the prophets whose work has been compiled by other authors. Whose works has been compiled by other authors. We call them the non-canonical prophets. The non-canonical prophets. A good example is Nathan, Elisha, and Elijah. Yeah, their works were compiled by other authors, but they were prophets. We call them non-canonical. So we've said they are Nathan, Elisha, and Elijah. And lastly is what we call the cultic prophets. These cultic prophets are prophets who were closely related to places of worship. They were prophets who were closely related to places of worship. And they assisted priests in their duties. They assisted priests in their duties. We call them the cultic prophets. They were associated with place of worship. Now, so these are the categories of prophets: true, false, minor, major, canonical, non-canonical, and cultic. Now, let us see the importance of prophets. The importance of prophets. Importance of prophets. One of the importance of prophets is they acted as cords, they acted as mediators between God and men. They acted as mediators between God and men. They communicated God's messages to the people by revealing His plan. They communicated God's message to the people by revealing His plan. They preached practical monotheism. Practical Yahwism. They preach practical monotheism. They used to condemn evil in the society in the effort to restore justice in the society. They used to condemn evil in the society in the effort to restore justice in the society. They taught people about the nature of God. They taught people about the nature of God. They also anointed kings. Some of them anointed kings. They also acted as the conscience of kings and the people in society. They acted as the conscience of people and of kings and people in the society. Some of the prophets acted as priests. A good example is Prophet Jeremiah and Prophet Isaiah. They acted as priests. They also foretold and warned people of judgment for their disobedience to God. They foretold and warned people of judgment for their disobedience to God. They gave hope of restoration to the people if they repented. They gave hope of restoration to the people if they repented. Prophets taught people about the covenant way of life and reminded them of their responsibilities. Prophets taught people about the covenant way of life and reminded them of their responsibilities. So those are some of the importance of prophets. Now let us see the qualities of true prophets. Qualities of true prophets. One of the qualities of a true prophet is they heard God's voice calling them to be spokesperson through dreams strange objects, and visions. Most of these true prophets had God's voice calling them to be his spokespersons through dreams, strange objects, and visions. True prophets also positively respond to the call with obedience. They respond to God's call with obedience. They stood for the covenant way of life. They stood for the covenant way of life. They spoke. They also spoke and acted with authority and courage, regardless of the consequences. This is a very important quality. They spoke and acted with authority and encourage regardless of the consequences. They condemn all types of evils in the society. They condemn all types of evils in the society. They also had faith in Yahweh. They had faith in Yahweh. They also led righteous lives. They also acted as mediators between God and the people. They acted as mediators between God and the people. They challenged the false prophets. They communicate God's messages to the people, sometimes through strange symbolic ways. They communicated God's message to the people, sometimes through strange symbolic ways. They were prayerful and always sought God's kindness and revelation. They were prayerful and always sought God's kindness and revelation. They faced rejection and persecution from the people. Their prophecies came to pass. And lastly, their prophecies came to pass. So those are some of the qualities of true prophets. Let us see the qualities of false prophets. Qualities of false prophets, or characteristics of false prophets. One of the outstanding characteristics of false prophets is they challenge the work of the true prophets. They challenge the work of the true prophets. They give messages full of untruth to please the kings and the ruler of that time. They gave messages full of untruth to please the king and the rulers of that time. They were self-appointed and cheated people and made them believe that they were working for God. They were self-appointed and cheated people and made them believe that they were working for God. They challenged the law of God through Moses. They led people to the worship of other gods and immorality. They promised peace while that was not true, without demanding for obedience of God's law. They were not guided by Yahweh, but their own wisdom. They were guided by their own wisdom. They offered shallow optimism, with which devoid of moral conduct. Which was devoid of moral conduct. They demanded payment for their services. Lastly, they demanded payment for their services. So those are some of the characteristics of true and false prophets. Lastly, let us see the writing of prophetic messages. There are various ways, when we talk about writing of prophetic messages, there are various ways in which the prophetic messages were recorded by the prophets. How were the messages given to prophets recorded? So we are going to analyze that, or to understand that by trying to see how are the prophetic messages written. One of them is that the prophets themselves may have written the prophetic messages. We have instances where the prophet himself wrote the message given to him by God. the prophets also dictated the messages to a scribe to write it down. We've heard of Baruch. Baruch was a scribe to Jeremiah. So the prophets dictated messages to a scribe to write it down. God dictated also the prophets what was to be put down. So God dictated the prophets what was to be put down. Like how God commanded Moses to write some of the laws in Deuteronomy. The disciples of the prophets preserved their master's teachings as oral traditions and passed it over to the subsequent generations. The disciples of the prophets preserved their master's teachings and as oral traditions and passed it from one generation to the other. The disciples of the prophets treasured the recollections of the prophet's life as well as the oracles and incorporated them in the historical books of the Bible. So the disciples of the prophets treasured the recollection of the prophet's life as well as the oracles and incorporated them in the historical books of the Bible. The scribes also reorganized the prophet's teachings according to the subject matter. They reorganized the prophet's teaching according to the subject matter. Least but not last is the prophetic messages were originally written on scrolls and stone tablets in Hebrew and in continuous prose. So they were originally written on scrolls and stone tablets in Hebrew. Lastly, is the chapters and verses were indicated by inspired authors to make it easier to read. And so they also rearranged it chronologically to connect events. So the chapters and verses were indicated by inspired authors to make it easier to read, and they also rearranged it chronologically to connect events. So those are some of the ways in which prophetic messages were written. And that marks the end of our lesson for now.